You know what my favorite thing about watercolor might be? That you can paint the same thing so many different ways on top of being able to paint it on so many different papers that also give your work such a unique look. So I love that about watercolor. Now, last year I painted this ornament. Let me show you this ornament. I painted this ornament last year 3 times. 3 different ways, and that is a free video on my YouTube channel, so be sure to check that out. So in this video, I'm going to show you, it's hard to choose because I have about 15 of these. But first, let me introduce myself. My name is Rachel Parker Varner, and I like to teach not just the how, but the why of watercolor, so you move along your painting journey a lot faster. You can join my communities for free. I have a free community on Facebook, and I have a free community on my Patreon. Yes, you can join my Patreon for free and just stay in touch with what I'm doing. And I have a lot of exciting things coming up. And remember, post your paintings when you finish them. And you can post on my Facebook group at facebook.com/group/Rachel's Watercolor Workshop, or you can post on Patreon at patreon.com/RachelStudio/chats. And I can't wait to see your work. All right, let's look at, this might be my favorite. And I literally gasped with awe and wonder when I used a special paint on this tree, and it made the tree look like it was lighting up. It was so cool. And I have 2 really cool tricks on how I painted this Christmas tree. So let's take a look at this footage. Here we go. All right, here is one of 2 secret art supplies that make painting Christmas trees so easy and fun. These are grease pencils that you can get on Amazon. Remember, I will link them in a pinned comment. Today, we're going to use a yellow one, but there's so many different things that you could do with these in even non-holiday paintings. So this is Strathmore watercolor postcards. I've been painting postcards with my online students, so I have several projects that are bite-sized projects that are just fun and not intimidating. All right, here is my other fun paint that's just fun to play with, Indian Yellow by Daniel Smith. And I'm going to paint it on Strathmore watercolor paper. I do recommend using the best watercolor paper you can. You'll get better results the better paper you use. I'm dotting on some yellow lights. This is grease, so it will resist the water. So you can see where I'm going with this, right? And just remember, this is available in real time, and a lot of times I'll slow down my footage, but I'm just mixing greens from cobalt blue and Daniel Smith permanent green light. And then I add clean, clear water here and there to loosen it up. And here comes the fun part, dabbing in some cream consistency. Cream consistency meaning just a little bit of water added to quite a good bit of Indian yellow. And I'm dotting it onto this wet paint. And look how it explodes into the wet paint. Love that. It's like the Christmas tree lights up. And I've done several Christmas trees with this technique, and every single one looks different. Welcome to loose watercolor painting, where every time you paint the same exact thing, it looks completely different. And to me, that's the fun of watercolor. It kind of does its own thing and surprises you pleasantly, often pleasantly, every time. Now I'm getting thicker paint, meaning less water added, so I get darker areas for my Christmas tree. You don't want your Christmas tree to be all one value, because remember, values do all the hard work and color steals the glory. So you want light areas in your Christmas tree, dark areas, and medium valued areas. So the thicker your paint, oh, here comes more Indian yellow too. The thicker your paint, the darker your paint will be. And so I splat water into it and splat watery Indian yellow into this painting. And now I'm going to put just a little bit of salt to see if I can get it to texture out. Some paints react better to salt than others. So you never know with watercolor. I will say, just as a little extra tip, anything with phthalo blue in it will do salt effects beautifully, I've found. And it also depends on your paper, which I did a whole tutorial a couple weeks back on how to get really good salt effects. But salt effects in trees really add some nice texture to your trees. And that applies whether you're painting Christmas trees or just landscape trees. So a lot of these tips will apply no matter what kind of trees you're painting. And I also want to back up a little bit and just say, when I painted the trunk, I used burnt sienna, and I let the wet trunk touch the wet tree, touch the wet cast shadow, so it all melts together. All right, now everything's completely dry. Look how magical it looks. It's just gorgeous. And now I'm getting some very watery Daniel Smith transparent Pyrrole orange, and I'm putting a little bit in the middle of some of my light areas of yellow to give the lights in my tree a little more dimension. Now I'm doing the same thing with M-gram Naphthol red. I do have a whole free tutorial on these non-staining paints that I depend on to get really unique techniques and fixability. So be sure to check out that video. But I'm adding little dots of red here and there because every Christmas tree needs a little red. And what does red do with the complementary color green in our Christmas tree? It vibrates. A color is dead without its complement. All right, so here's a Pigma Micron 05 pen, and you may or may not want to do this. This is a stylistic choice. I like to put a little scribble with these Pigma Micron archival pens. And then I'm going to use this Uniball Broad white gel pen. These, I can't live without these. For all kinds of little tiny white details. I call this putting on the jewelry. And just like any jewelry, you don't want too much and you don't want too little, but you do want some jewelry. So I put in some white garland. And now I'm going to add a little bit of red to it, which I've never added red paint on top of my white gel pen. But I wanted to try it out, and it worked pretty well. I feel like my garland stands out pretty nicely. So it worked. And this was one of my favorite Christmas trees of the year. I have several Christmas trees, though, from years past on my Patreon, and I slow down the footage a lot to really explain my colors and why I'm mixing them the way I do. So if you want to learn more in depth how to get these results, be sure to check out the end of this video where I will talk about my online school, which you can also join for free, as I said. Love this tree so much. And next I want to show you, if you want to send this as a postcard or a Christmas card in the mail and you don't want to put it in an envelope, you can use Dorland's wax. So this is Dorland's wax. You want to make sure your painting is completely dry. And then you just rub this wax on your painting. And it doesn't smear it. You know, your painting does need to be dry, but it will create a protective barrier. So if you spill water on this now, it'll just roll off after you put the wax on it. It takes about 24 hours to cure. It takes about an hour to dry. And by the way, that goose there is another start to finish real-time tutorial on my YouTube. I have lots of good free content that you can go watch to see if you like my teaching style. And then of course, these other two paintings are also tutorials on my online school, along with over 200 other tutorials you get instant access to. Along with over 200 other tutorials you get instant access to completely ad-free. But I'll talk about that more later at the end of this video. All right, this is the next one I want to show you. This lettering may look difficult, but it couldn't be easier. And when I show you how I did this, it's going to give you so many ideas for so many other things that you could do. So I hope this just is the tip of the iceberg for you about all the different things you could do with the technique I'm about to show you. This one's going to be a good one. Here we go. Okay, here's the trick. You use a stencil, and what I'm doing first is filling in the edges of the stencil with pencil, so when I'm painting, I can see how far over I need to paint my tree. And then what you're going to see me do next is paint a line down the middle of the tree so that I make sure that the tip of the top of the tree is over my trunk because I've learned the hard way. You'd think it would be easy, but it's not. It's not easy to get it balanced. And then I'm using this sword brush. I think Silver Black Velvet calls this a striper brush. And I'm mushing it on my paper and pushing it kind of away from me to make these interesting edges. And then I use my finger to pull them out even a little bit more. And then when your paint is wet like this, you can use a tissue or a paper towel to blot up any mistakes, any wayward boughs of the Christmas tree. And there I go with the trunk, and I'm letting the wet trunk melt into my tree, melt into the cast shadow. That's a classic Charles Reed trick, is to let things melt together, and then I go in with my magic Indian yellow, and sometimes it spreads and sometimes it doesn't. That's watercolor. And then I blot up parts of my tree with tissue to create some lighter areas, because I don't want my Christmas tree all flat, medium value. But this one isn't quite as important as other ones. Ooh, look, that Indian yellow did spread right there. Love to watch that happen. Love to get lost in the process of watercolor when that happens. But anyway, because we're going to put a stencil, it doesn't matter as much that my tree is all one flat value for the most part. But here I go in with thicker ultramarine blue to get it darker. And then I blot up the left side of the tree as if the light is coming from the left to give it a little bit of value variation. And then I splat it as it's setting up and going into buckling stage. I splat it with clean, clear water, and look, it gave it some texture. All right, you let your tree dry completely, of course. That makes sense, right? And then get your stencil of choice. I will link some stencils that you can get on Amazon in the pinned comment. You get your magic eraser. Yes, folks, a magic eraser. I have lots of free tutorials about how I use magic eraser. I have a funny one that is entertaining to watch about a commission that went sideways where the painting ate a whole magic eraser. So don't miss that. And then you can add some detailing with a black pen. This is a Sharpie, but I would say use an archival pen or white gel pen to add some details. All right, let's see what else I have for you guys. Now that we've watched this, I can tell you I have another free video on my channel showing this tree from last year. So be sure to check that one out too. Well, I won't give it away, but I did a little bit of a different technique with what I just did for this tree. So be sure to check it out. I do have a lot of holiday content on my paid Patreon, but all these should give you a really good taste of how I teach. Here is another one. All right, let's learn how I painted this one. And this is a core Rachel Varner technique of how I like to work to keep my work loose and dreamy the easy way. Here we go. And I've got about, I would say, a 6 round, and I'm just going to paint some real quick brush marks, wet on dry. I'm trying to change the color of each one, and as I get to the bottom of the tree, I use dry brush technique and make bigger and bigger boughs. And I try to change the color as I go, and I get scratchy texture by using the side of my brush in a fast swishy motion. This is called dry brush. And then I spray it with a misting spray bottle, or you could splat it with water dripping off your fingers. And then I splat in some Indian yellow into the tree to also give it some interesting texture and also some color variety. Any splats that you get outside your tree, as long as they are wet, you can just blot them up. And then to try to get some value variety, you want lights, mediums, and darks in your tree, and the lights are the white of the paper. I put in some thicker French ultramarine here and there towards the bottom to give it some dimension. And then I blot part of the tree to get some light areas for more value variety. All right, thank you so much for joining me for this video. And now let me tell you a little bit about my paid offerings. Here we go. What you get access to is a library of over 200 tutorials. It's basically the last 5 or 6 years of my painting. I've videoed everything, turned them into tutorials and demonstrations. Some are tutorials where I really hold your hand and take it slow. Sometimes I even slow down the footage. And those are my $13 tier, highly edited tutorials and that's why I say they're more for beginners, because they slow down and really explain what I'm doing so you learn the fundamentals, whys, and hows of watercolor. So that's in my $13 tier. I put lots of work into those. And then there's also demonstrations. I call them demonstrations because it's kind of like watching me paint over my shoulder. And I explain a lot in those tutorials too, but they are not as slowed down. They're not as highly edited where I'm putting in a lot of extra explanation and demonstrations. So those are the two kinds of tutorials I have, from everything from super beginner tutorials all the way up to paintings that I have gotten into international competitions and have won awards. You can watch that painting process for those paintings, which I did that because I wish some of my favorite artists would provide that kind of footage, which some of them do, but then they charge $6,000 for a workshop and you have to go to Timbuktu to see it. So that is what I have on my Patreon, and I think you'll really enjoy it. No matter what level painter you are, there is something for everyone. So also, might I add, they are ad-free. You get a downloadable line drawing and a reference photo, supply list, and a lot of the tutorials really have in-depth how as well as why explanations, so you learn the foundations of painting. And I've had people tell me, even though I watched a tutorial say about a cat, what I learned was to paint anything. So I teach in a way where you will learn the fundamentals of watercolor to be successful no matter what you want to paint. So I hope you'll come join me. And did I mention they are ad-free? No annoying ads. Also, when you join my Patreon for a year, you get 2 months free. So you pay for 10 months, you get 2 months free, and you get more in-depth access to me. You can email me your works in progress or your finalized paintings and get critiques or more in-depth suggestions about what to do next with your paintings. And you can also join my communities for free. And if you ask for feedback on your paintings you post there, we will give you feedback. But if you want more in-depth feedback and you want to get 2 months free, be sure to join my Patreon for a year. So I hope you'll join me, but at the very least, come join my Patreon for free, where you can stay in closer touch with me. You can kind of keep in touch with my adventures that I'm planning. I have a couple up my sleeve, including the Lisa Wong workshop coming up in November in Charleston. So it's kind of like joining a watercolor fun club. It's starting to turn into that because I have another big fun trip that I'm planning, and my members have expressed great excitement over. So I can't wait to share more about that when I get the details ironed out. Thank you so much for joining me for this tutorial. Remember, I am happy for you to sell your original. I don't mind that at all. I just ask that you tag me when you post on social media about my tutorial so it helps spread the word. All right, thanks so much for joining me for this Technique Tuesday holiday edition, and I hope you enjoyed it. And until next time, go watercolor your world. Bye, everybody.